Hello and welcome. My name is Brian McAvoy. This is
Two cyborgs and a microphone.
Today I'm drinking a makeshift latte in a Reno hotel, but I assure you, I am wearing a Two Cyborgs hoodie. Tim is busy with his wife getting ready to deliver their baby, so he's off the hook this episode, and I'm flying solo. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything weird this show. Since I started grinding a few years ago, I've had all these meandering thoughts, lots and lots, and I'm sure we all do. I wanted to share those thoughts with our listeners, and maybe they'll get picked up on a discussion on biohack.me, or maybe a listener will respond in the comments wherever he or she listens to podcasts. Maybe this is all just food for thought. As I'm recording this, I don't know if this is going to end up going to Patreon exclusively, or if this is going to end up being an entire episode by itself. One of the issues I wanted to bring up about the biohacking and grinding community is that there's no sense of humor. I don't think this is the fault of the community. I think it's because humor is largely based on stereotypes. We find them funny, we poke fun at them, but grinding and biohacking, there's very few stereotypes there. On the one hand, this speaks to the kind of community we have. There's no stereotypical grinder. There's no preconceived notion that a grinder is some young Asian male with a trendy haircut. And by the way, I'm none of those things except for male. Sadly, I think this means that there's just not going to be grinding humor, at least not for a while. Most of the jokes I've heard revolve around the whole revelations thing regarding RFID implants, and that's really more making fun of the people who quote revelations in regards to this, not the grinders. I'm going to segue here. Every grinder I've talked to or listened to has said that they came to it by accident or by chance, always by searching for something else. Maybe they went searching for an RFID lock and found that you could have it implanted in your hand. Sometimes they went searching for something like the term cyborg because they read about rats or cockroaches which had been augmented with technological apparatus to make them cyborgs. I think it was the show White Rabbit which did a segment on controlling humans through technological means, and they had a remote-controlled cockroach. That segment was led by Carrie Byron, who was also on Myth Turns, and I believe she even got an RFID implant to see if it was able to go through an MRI. So maybe people wound up searching for cyborgs because they liked redheads. The point I'm making is that people don't come across grinding because of primary research. They don't go out looking for it. They end up finding it as a secondary or tertiary search query. And I think what this comes down to is that it's a really foreign concept to people. Until you start digging into it, you don't really know what it's all about. That's actually kind of a problem, because if people don't know what you're about within seconds, they're going to either look away or they might keep looking, but you're not going to hook people immediately, and that's a problem. Now, professionally, I'm an engineer, and engineers are often, and for good reason, kept very far away from marketing. Still, every so often I come across a marketing tidbit that I find really useful or extremely pithy. The one I wanted to bring up is that any product, which in this case would be grinding, should be instantly recognizable to a first-time viewer. The reason this is a problem for us is because grinding takes research to understand what's going on. When I tell people I have a magnet implant without any prelude, the look I get is instantly, what? Why? Why would you do that? That doesn't seem functional, useful, and you're a practical person, so what's going on? And a magnet implant is kind of a big deal, but it's ineffectively portrayed. With all the marketing we've got, people expect that wow factor immediately. And you don't get that from waving your hand around a transformer and saying, yeah, I can feel that, or I can feel magnets. People don't care about that. Sadly, in this case, I think a parlor trick is actually a more effective way to make people understand the advantage of a magnet. Plus, who doesn't love a magic trick as an icebreaker? Who do you think's going to have more conversations at a party? Some guy who waves his hands near a computer power supply and says, yeah, I can feel something, or some guy who's levitating a $20 bill? The same applies with RFID and NFC. If you show yourself unlocking your phone to somebody, most people go, so what? I can unlock my phone with my fingerprint, or facial recognition, or voice recognition. Being able to do it with your hand, which works sketchily at best anyway, is not that impressive. It's not going to make people think, wow, there's a serious advantage to that. They're going to think, okay, that's a peculiar and kind of hodgepodge way to make something work. On the flip side, something like a work badge which can be copied to an RFID, that can be an impressive demonstration, because how many times have you forgotten your work badge or your credit card? If you show a coworker yourself badging in with your bare hand, that might impress somebody more than unlocking a phone. Same goes for the people who have implanted their transit passes. That is attention getting, and people can see right off the bat, in a glance, in an instant, in a second, exactly how that could benefit them. Now this leads into the companies that have made implantable lights. The one I think which got the most press coverage was Grindhouse Wetwares and their North Star. This was an implantable ring of LEDs which turned on by a magnet. There was just a simple microcontroller in there and a reed switch. Now, these might have gotten their popularity because of the EO factor, or at least the whoa factor. But any raver could look at this and be like, oh, I get it. There's lights, and they're implanted, and it's a body mod, and it's cosmetic. So that's cool. I get it. I get it right away, and that's good. Another company making implantable lights is Cybereyes.me. That's based out of Australia by Alex Smith. He makes the firefly tattoos, which tattoos is kind of a misnomer because it has nothing to do with ink or patterns or anything like that. It's a small tritium vial lined with lead that emits light. The tritium is radioactive. It has a half-life of 12 years, I think. I have one of these. It's in my right hand. It's between the index finger and middle finger metacarpals, so right in the middle of the back of my hand. If I make a fist, you can see the bulge very easily, but if I don't tell people about it, nobody really notices it. It's only visible in dark places like movie theaters or at bonfires, and that's where I show it off. And I enjoy it. It's very easy to show people that I've got a body mod that's really uncommon. Kind of neat, but it's not functional, so some people don't really call this grinding. I guess the biggest function of it is kind of advertising for grinding. It's an icebreaker to get people to listen about what other implants you have, and that implants are kind of cool. So, I would like to see more people creating implants which might not have super functionality, that might not be the most innovative thing in the world, but they would let people know at a glance that there's more than meets the eye to the person they're looking at. I've thought long and hard about this. I've racked my brain trying to come up with implantable objects and devices which anybody could recognize within a second and recognize the value of it immediately. And this is harder than you think. Way harder. One of the ideas that I'm not exactly hooked on is basically an implantable maraca. This idea came about because of a couple things. The version 2 of Alex Smith's Firefly tattoo is a glass capsule within a glass capsule. So if you shake it hard enough, you will hear kind of that tinkling glass against glass sound. Now, when I was in high school, wristbands were all the rage. So I would wear this elastic wristband with a plastic capsule that had a metal bead inside of it. And when I shook my wrist back and forth, it would make a clacking sound. I could have used a plastic container with a bunch of little beads in there and got that shaking sound. Now, I don't know of anyone who would want this permanently implanted in their body for the rest of their life, but anybody who heard that maraca sound coming from a supposedly bare arm or hand would at least understand what's going on and probably make some assumptions about that person's commitment to music. I doubt this is going to be next fall's hot fashion, but if you want to goof around, get one of those little bubbles that come out of the vending machine and fill it with sand or a few beads or some dry beans. It is strangely addictive to have something that makes noise on your wrist that you can activate at any time. The other idea I had regarding this was an implantable soroban, which most people would probably recognize as an abacus. It shouldn't be all that hard to create silicon tubes with beads inside of it that are separated the same way a soroban is separated. Those tubes could be installed in, I was thinking, the underside of my forearm, on probably my right arm. Those beads could be moved around inside of this silicon tube the way the beads of a soroban are moved around, and voila, you have a abacus that's with you all the time. Most people would recognize this immediately, especially if you got a tattoo of an abacus frame over your implants. It also has that kind of retro aspect to it. Unfortunately, while most people would recognize it as a soroban or an abacus, they're not going to recognize that it's particularly valuable. Even if you're very quick with an abacus or a soroban, when it's under the skin, it's not going to move quickly. Those beads are not going to zip around as quickly as if you were using an abacus made out of wood. Or maybe I'm wrong. This has never been done before. Who knows? My point here is not to convince you that an abacus or a rattle installed under the skin is a great idea. All I wanted to do is give an example of something that would be instantly recognizable to most people and still exist as an implant. If nothing else, this should just be fuel for some brainstorming session. It also brings up another point I heard from the marketing side of the world. When you're releasing something new, it should be one of two things. It should have a new look, or it should have a new function, but not both. When they put anti-lock brakes in cars for the first time, they didn't make it a handbrake. That would have confused people. Heck, when they created cars for the first time, they look like horse buggies. What grinding too often tries to do is make something that's unrecognizable to people and they don't understand the function of it. Between those two factors, we ostracize a lot of people who would otherwise probably be interested. Thanks for listening to my ramblings. I hope you found something useful in there. If there's something you want to tell me personally, privately about this, you can email me at brian@twocyborgs.com. If you want to get a hold of Tim, maybe congratulate him on the new baby, you can hit him up at tim@twocyborgs.com. There's our website, twocyborgs.com. We have a cafe press store. You can get one of those hooded sweatshirts. Now, I'm wearing one of those. That has elastic wristbands. You could easily put one of those plastic and metal maracas I was talking about under the wrist cuff and give that a test drive. This is Brian McAvoy, and I should know about the wrist cuff because I'm wearing one of the hoodies right now. You've been listening to Two Cyborgs and a Microphone. Technically only one cyborg and one microphone. Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe on any of the popular podcast services, including Google Play Music, iTunes, and Stitcher. If you leave comments for us on iTunes, it'll really help us move up that ladder. And we also tweet @2cyborgs.